G'day, Bomber fans. Well, that wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. That's what we'll say. The Bombers didn't lose by 100 points. We didn't even get smashed. It was actually a pretty close game in the end, which means it's an interesting game to talk about. We don't have to be too unhappy about it. Are we happy? Probably not. I mean, you can't really be happy with a loss. But I'm not as frustrated and confused as I have been in recent weeks, which is good. We've actually got something to talk about this week and some positive things to say about this game. So let's get into it. Remember to leave your votes in the comments below. Quarter by quarter recap. The first started out well. Our pressure was really good. We were giving it a crack, locking the ball in our forward 50, giving ourselves opportunities. The Swans did kick the first, but we would respond with back-to-back goals from Perkins and Guelphy. They would hit the front and find control around the ground after that. We were down by 11 at the first break, but half the quarter was very positive, great intent, and then the other half, the Swans just took that intent away and managed to find a lot of marks on the outside, take the sting out of the game a bit, and that gave them a great foundation to work with for the rest of the match. The second, we really found out which way the wind was going. The Swans had nature on their side as a 19th man. It was really scrappy, early in the term, and then the rain started to really bucket down and made it even scrappier. It took 20 minutes for either team to kick a goal, and there were 7 behinds before that goal was kicked in the quarter. Just 2 goals for the quarter, both of them for the Swans. They would enter the main break with a 27-point lead. After the break, we came out firing. Angus Clark converted a nice set shot, as did Archer May. But then it was about 15 minutes of absolutely nothing from both teams. That third quarter really just seemed like neither team out there wanted to be playing footy. It was, cold, fingers were freezing and jarring. It looked like both teams had an agreement that, to just keep the margin as it was and not really do much else. But then in the fourth, the Bombers broke that agreement because we started to come in hot, and for a bit there, as the ball was sailing through the air after that Merritt shot from outside 50, I think all of us fans were thinking, maybe this is real. Maybe, we can win this game. You had Redmond going bang from outside 50. Kako ran in for a beauty. Blackiston kicked his first AFL goal. Things were fun. Footy was fun to watch. In the end, we weren't quite good enough to get the win. We did make the Swans sweat. It was 68-54 in the end at a wet SCG. But yeah, we didn't get the job done. So let's talk about the game. Well, I mean, this was a bit of a dead rubber game. Both these teams were pretty much done for the year. I say pretty much because the Swans they're still a mathematical chance, but realistically, they're done. You could tell that both these teams were, maybe for about 80% of the game, were just cruising. The intent, the effort was there, but it wasn't as there as it would be for a team like Collingwood or Adelaide or Brisbane, one of those top teams. I thought the first 10 or so minutes was really intense. We set the tone early. I loved our pressure, and I thought the last 10 or so minutes were really intense. We were trying to win the game. Everything in between, it was kind of just two teams playing footy, both trying to win, obviously. But, there's obviously this subconscious thing when you're out there playing a game with no stakes. If these teams are playing for finals, there's going to be heat. The pressure ratings are going to be high. You're always harder when there are stakes, but there weren't stakes. And you can't really teach the boys to, play as if there's everything on the line if there isn't everything on the line. But also, I think a big reason why there was a drop-off in pressure for us and intent was probably because the Swans were playing as if they had, a prime 2023 Essendon lineup. They were chipping it around the place, uncontested marks, not really getting anywhere really with the footy. It seemed like we covered the middle of the ground really well early. They tried to go there and then they realised they're not going to get anything going through that zone that they like to score from. So they had to overpossess to kind of get around our setup there and go around the middle of the ground. So the big stat, going around is 136 marks to 42. Sydney had almost 100 more marks. They had 120 uncontested marks. If those numbers sound familiar, that's Essendon last year and the year before. Everyone complaining about those stats, I don't really care about it that much. Obviously, you don't want to see a team control the game as much as the Swans did, but how much damage did they do from that? That is what they were doing in this game is what we were trying to cut out of our game this year, which we have been cutting out of our game. That pointless possessing of the footy that really gets you nowhere. It wins you games against teams that you're better than. That they held the footy more than us, they controlled the footy, but that isn't what won them the game. That's not what I was worried about in the slightest. The uncontested game can only get you so far. If you play like that against good teams, teams, it doesn't stack up. What was more difficult for me to get behind was the contest and how easy it was for the Swans to, sometimes get that footy out to those players to get control of the ball. They took almost 100 marks more than us and won by 14 points. If we're better at the contest and more effective with our contested possessions, we probably win that game, even if they take 100 more marks. Like, I saw the Swans control the outside and do nothing with it. That is what I saw from this game. Obviously, you don't want to see those numbers, and those numbers wouldn't be around if we were better at the contest. So, yeah, I think, how good is it to be talking about a game and not having to, really tiptoe around that win that we were getting last year and the year before with those high, uncontested mark games and just controlling, or I guess defending with the footy. That's not what we're doing anymore. That's what the Swans were doing in this game. And I don't know, it felt weird. It felt weird to be, on the receiving end of things, because it really didn't, we've been doing that to teams a lot in the last few years. And to be on the receiving end, it kind of, I don't know, takes the sting out of it a bit. I thought something else that was really interesting was just how makeshift our backline was in this particular game. And I'm saying this a lot this year, but this game in particular was pretty eye-opening. So at one stage we had Blackiston, who's a ruckman, Archer May, who's a key forward, and Jaden Laverty, who's an undersized key defender. And I get that the Swans had injuries to their forward line. That's probably what helped us. Both that zone of the ground is just horrendous because of personnel for both teams. But there were times in the game, and look, we all love Blackiston. We love May. Newen looks like a gem, but these guys, playing their first AFL footy in a backline together, you can tell. Like, there were times, the Blackiston double fist, that the spoil that went backwards and resulted in a goal, or, the teammates jumping up for the same footy and leaving their opponents on ground level. There were things that just wouldn't happen in a game with experienced defenders. Like, if Ridley was there, some of the acts that occurred just wouldn't happen. Like, even just, there was a Roberts, or maybe it was a Lawal kick in defence, which didn't hit a target, and then it just went over his head for a goal. A fair chunk of the Sydney goals that they kicked were from mistakes that we made, either defensively or offensively from the backline, and that just wouldn't be happening if we had better players there. And it's not just about personnel, it's also about where these guys are at in their stages of their career. Even Archie Roberts, who was awesome in that game, had some moments that he would like back, and you can, pin it down to youth, pin it down to inexperience. And I think, for us to lose by just 14 against a team that should really be better than where they are, like, I'd be disappointed if I was Sydney. You look at our backline, you look at the mistakes we're making, they only kicked 68 points. And it felt like there were some times where we were gifting them goals. So, yeah, I'd be disappointed if they're the Swans. Also, though, I think the way we defended at times, although it was good at times, against the Cats, they're going to smash us next week. Like, I think the Cats smash us, the Suns smash us at home. This game probably tells us a lot about where the Swans are at, to be honest. Because, if you're a top 10 team in the competition, you should really be putting us to the sword a little bit more than the Swans did yesterday. Something that I really liked about this game was the last 10 minutes. And obviously we lost, which is not good. But I think, for experience alone, for guys like Blackiston and Newen and Clark and these young guys who haven't tasted victory yet, or Clark has, but these other ones that haven't, even just being in a close game and sniffing a win. Like I talked about this earlier, but that Merritt miss from 60 where he wheeled onto his left and it was sailing through, I thought it was going to be a goal. Everyone was getting excited. After that moment, when he missed, I thought to myself, when was the last time I felt that watching footy? Like that excitement and tension about a potential close game. And the answer is the Brisbane game at the Gabba, which was, I don't even know when. That is the last time I felt nerves and tension watching the Bombers. Yes, Richmond and Carlton were close, but those, you can't really get honourable losses against those teams. And I don't think I'm going to call this game an honourable loss. I don't really rate the Swans enough to say that. But it was good to be close. Like, the Swans were over-possessing, trying to control the game, control the ground, and it didn't get them very far. They had complete control over the games at times, but we were really making them sweat. I think I would rather Essendon have lost this game with no control over it the way we did than win it by gathering over 100 more possessions like the Swans did. And that's their MO. Like, if that's how they want to play, go for it. But us fans, we remember what it was like winning these games last year, as if we were Sydney against poorer teams. I think this win in a few ways is pretty telling. It shows us that we're kind of, going away from that nothing game style, but also we've got a bloody long way to go. We've got guys on our list in our team that really, they're not going to be there next year. They're not going to be in our premiership team if we win in a few years. There are teams like Richmond and North and West Coast who, yes, they've got injuries too, but they have enough players to be having some list cloggers in the VFL. I did a video the other day about who we delist and who we keep, and I think 5 or 6 of the 11 players that I chose to get rid of played in this game. And we're being forced to play guys that we shouldn't be playing. That's the thing. With a fully fit list, we're not playing some of these guys, but at least it gives Rosa something to think about. And just on those guys, I'm not going to talk about them much. We don't need to be dissing Shield and Laverty, although I thought the latter actually had a really okay game. But the guys that we're 50-50 on, like Perkins, Hobbs, Gresham, Guelphy, there are so many questions there. And I'm not even really basing it off this game entirely, because I thought a big issue with this particular game was just the limited footy we had in the forward half. If you're going to diss Perkins for the amount of footy he had, you're going to do the same with Kako and Archer May and Mick Mahon before he was subbed. Perkins had 10 touches, that's not many, but then you look at the other forwards. Hobbs had 10, May had 8, Kako 7, Mick Mahon 4, Guelphy 3. There was no real ball to be won from our forwards. I can't remember a time where we had that little footy as a team, to be honest. But yeah, I guess the positive is what some of the kids did with it. I thought Kako with his 7 touches provided so much energy. I thought Angus Clark was running everywhere. Archie Roberts, that game is probably my favourite of his in a long time. He was scuffing kicks left, right and centre, but some of the things he was doing in traffic. Newen on debut, pocketing Tom Papley. How good is Jaden Newen? Not even just as a talent, but just as an energy to have in the team. I loved the way he went about it. So no, I leave this game thinking, things are obviously bad in 2025. We know that. We're not really that happy watching the footy. But I guess, against an ordinary Sydney team, even if you just add a ruckman to that team, we probably come away with a win. It could just be about personnel. Yeah, I mean, the Swans were better, but how much of that is personnel? They had some injuries themselves, but the injuries they had were kind of matched by ours. So if they complain about the forwards missing, take a look at our back line. We had Goldie in the ruck being monstered by Grundy. 39 disposals for a ruck is just... what can you really do about that? Absolutely nothing. I can't complain too much about that side of things because we've been doing that all year. But for the first time in a while, at least we are clutching at straws a bit to complain about anything. If you take 17 players out of the best teams in the league, take 17 players away from Adelaide, we don't know if they win at the SCG. If you take away their 4 best defenders, their 3 of their highest scoring forwards in the last few years, and their midfielders, their rucks, I don't know if they beat the Swans. That's genuine. We don't know. But for us to get close against a team at home, we can't be too unhappy. I think it's kind of a natural reaction to be unhappy at losses, and that's kind of the reaction that I'm feeling a bit. I've probably complained about our performance more than I should have in this game. But it's good to be feeling like that. I think it's good to be, coming away from a game and feeling unhappy, even though you were in it for most of it and only lost by a couple of goals. It's the best we've looked in weeks, And the funny thing about that is that a top team would be mortified to play the footy that we were playing out there. And part of that's because of the wet, the conditions were horrible. But yeah, I guess now it's just about reducing the aspects of our game plan that we can control, kind of teaching the kids how to be playing, so when we do have the numbers, we don't play crappy footy. I think games like this give me a bit of faith that we're going in the right direction with the right pieces of the puzzle. I say that knowing full well that we could lose by 100 points next week. That is just the joys of supporting a rebuilding team. Look at Richmond. They've been playing great footy lately, and then they go out and kick 2 goals against Gold Coast. That is just what it is like for a rebuilding team. I don't have any doubts that Richmond are going in the right direction, and if that's the case, it's hard to have too many doubts about the Bombers. I obviously do. It's kind of natural to have doubts as a fan, but we've got good young players at our disposal. We're starting to play okay footy against teams that we can match it with. Against the Cats next week, I mean, we'll see how that goes. We'll get onto the votes. We'll talk about that Cats game, and hopefully that's not too bad. But yeah, overall, not a bad effort. We didn't get the win, which is disappointing, but we didn't disgrace ourselves either. So yeah, onto the votes. 1 vote to Archie Roberts. He looked good at times in this game. I'm not comparing him to Scott Pendlebury, but the way he moved around in traffic was just unreal. He was so elite, but also at times he was so unelite. That composure to weave through massive packs and then lace out the boundary line was pretty crazy. I thought, in that weather, given the circumstances, most of the time territory was enough, and he just his composure in the back line made us look so much cleaner as a team. 2 votes to Andy McGrath. There wasn't really a player in the midfield that was more energetic and lively than him. Not just disposals, but he led the Bombers for pressure acts, ground ball gets, clearances, tackles. I know people are going to complain about his turnovers because everyone likes to complain about McGrath, but if you're going to do that, you better put Sam Durham under the bus as well, because he had the same amount of turnovers but gets 1 more vote. He gets my 3 votes. Just his attack on the footy was something else. That's why I give the votes to these players, to be honest. In a wet weather game, you need the attack on the footy. You need that composure in packs, and I thought all 3 of these players got the footy on the ground. They ripped it out, got us territory, and that's what I liked. Yeah, there were 3 guys who looked really comfortable and willing to win the footy at the contest in a game where most of the team was struggling. Take away any of these 3 players and the margin's bigger. And my role player, I was going to go Jackson Pry, but I gave him votes last week, so I think Laverty probably needs some love. 22 touches doesn't feel like a typical role player game, but I thought it was more the defensive work he did that I liked. So, yeah, that is all. That's all I really got to say. Cheers for watching, Bomber fans. Plenty more content coming your way. Trade videos should be out this week. Draft videos too. Like, subscribe, and go Bombers.